Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm, and you are watching What If Naruto meets Minato and Kushina, who was resurrected by Kami. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
For both residents and ninja, the peaceful summer evening provided a sense of security in Konohagakure no Sato. In the 5 hectic years since the Kyuubi no Yoko attack, many had been in dire need of a sense of calm, which the uneventful evening provided between the attack, the reconstruction, and the failed attempt to kidnap the Hyuga heiress. It was nights like these, when the only sound in the streets was the peaceful breeze, that made everyone feel more at ease in any case. It calmed everyone except for one lonely orphan. Naruto Uzumaki, a young blonde boy, was sitting in his room in the orphanage's attic. After cleaning the kitchen today, his unkempt blonde hair was a little matted with dirt. His second-hand clothing, which was in sufficient shape to cover his body but not nearly enough to keep him warm, was filthy and looked as though it had been there for a while. Nothing that the blonde owned, that is, the only items the orphanage's owners ever gave him, was actually brand new or exclusively for him. Not a single item of clothing, toy, or food scrap was for him alone. Naruto understood why. He wasn't unique enough. Naruto had no idea what ownership or possessions were. He never accomplished anything worthy of earning them. Naruto would take anything from someone first if they needed it. Naruto exemplified the idea of never having enough. He was fed enough to keep him from starving to death, which usually meant half a loaf of bread and mineral broth for some nutrients, but not enough to stop his stomach from making noises to tell him to eat more. He was protected from the weather just enough to avoid being killed by it, but not enough to keep him warm. He was unable to recall the last time he had felt completely warm. He was never given any gifts, and if he did get any money, whether by chance or out of sympathy from a little child who had obtained it from an unknown source, he would have to use it to make up for his misdeeds, whether it was running into someone and causing them to throw away their food or failing to wash his clothes to his caretaker's standards. Despite doing a lot of chores, he never received recognition for them. He accepted that this was his lot in life. Naruto was never given credit for his presence. Naruto learned early in life that people of all ages would always ignore him. People ignored him regardless of how cold, hungry, afraid, or alone he felt. He initially believed they were merely being cruel. He eventually came to the realization that it was simply because of who he was. Only 2 individuals were ever aware of Naruto's presence. The old man in the red and white robes was the first to appear every month. The benevolent elderly man would take him to the park for a stroll while sharing some anecdotes about his shinobi career. The man even offered to take Naruto to a little food stand in town, but Naruto always said no, as a good boy should. The man had other people to look after and didn't need to waste his money on him. A young caretaker at the orphanage was the only other person who even spoke to Naruto. She walked with a cane despite her advanced age because of a defect in her leg that never fully healed itself, had medium-length brown hair, and wore glasses that appeared worn but not excessively so. She would teach Naruto some fundamental skills, such as reading and writing, but she was never able to stay for very long. At least she appeared to notice that he was still alive, even though he knew it would not help him because he had nothing to read or write on. He would occasionally act as though she genuinely cared about him, but he would quickly brush it off. After all, it was her responsibility to ensure that all of the children survived the day, so why would he be given preferential treatment in that sense? Naruto made an effort to be a good boy every time an adult visited the orphanage to select children for adoption. Naruto went into the attic to ensure that the special children, those who, in contrast to him, were deserving of adoption, could be adopted without fear of him chasing away the prospective adopters. He fulfilled every request made of him. He always offered what he had and never grumbled. He would silently nod and get to work if someone told him to work until he dropped. Naruto only saw his selfishness as the one thing he had done incorrectly. You see, no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to let go of one dream. Naruto had one goal in mind, and that was to have his own family. Despite his best efforts, he was unable to suppress his desire to emulate some of the other children. He wanted to experience what it was like to have a mother who would smile at him and be honest about her feelings, or a father who would give him a ride. However, he was aware that would never occur. He was the last person anyone wanted. Why he was so unloved was the only thing he did not understand. Was he unattractive? He was aware that blonde hair was uncommon in Konoha, and he had previously attempted numerous times to remove the whisker-like stains from his cheeks, but he was never successful. Perhaps it was because of his diminutive size. He was short and skinny by birth, and it wasn't his fault. Maybe he wasn't cool enough, smart enough, or quick enough. He finally concluded that he simply wasn't unique enough to be loved. Even though he knew he was fortunate to not live on the streets like some unfortunate souls, he would still cry for himself and hug his knees night after night because he was the only one who could comfort him if he needed it. Naruto was gazing into the darkness. Naruto, who struggled to fall asleep even after everyone else had gone to bed, realized that he had only one more task to complete after yet another meaningless day in his life before he would sit on his bed and wait for sleep to take him. He approached the windowsill, knelt down, gazed up at the stars, and said a prayer. To be honest, he had no idea what a religion was, so he wasn't particularly religious. He did, however, hear one of his caregivers tell another child about a person named Kami. It seems that Kami was someone who existed outside of human sight. It appears that Kami listened to people's prayers and created the universe. Perhaps, Naruto reasoned, if he prayed enough and did enough good deeds, Kami would laugh at someone like him and at least point out his mistakes, allowing him to perhaps get attention in the future. Naruto turned to face the sky and prayed, something he appeared to have said many times before but which was one of his last remaining hopes in his brief life. Kami-sama, it's me, Naruto again. I know I must be bad for praying this much and wasting your time, but I don't know what is wrong with me. I try to do what everyone tells me to do. I stop trying to look for attention that no one will give me, and I do everything I can to be a good boy. I just don't know what I am doing wrong. Am I being selfish because I want a family? If I am, can you send someone to tell me that I am not wanted anywhere? I know I am not worthy of you sending someone to talk to me, but can I see a sign, please? Or, if it is not too much trouble, can I have a family? I know I am being selfish, but I just want to know what that is like, to have one. I know it is selfish of me to ask that of someone as important as you to answer my prayer, but I just can't help it if it is within your power. All I ask is for a way to know if I will ever be special enough to have my dream come true. Following his prayer, Naruto crawled onto his tiny bed, positioned his head on his knees, and folded his arms over his legs on top of his soiled sheets. Despite not having a clock, he sensed that the night would be long. Every time Kami heard Naruto's prayer, he couldn't help but cry, even though Naruto didn't know that Kami had been listening to all of his prayers. In many different realms, Kami was referred to by a variety of names. He could take on any form, and his messengers could appear to anyone as anything, sometimes as guardian angels, sometimes as prophets, and many more in various forms. Some called him Allah, while others called him the Great, I Am, or the Lord. Kami detested seeing children suffer, though, and this was one thing that never changed. Even though he gave his creations free will, he detested it when they showed such neglect and indifference toward a young person. The young child's prayer was not going to be answered, and Kami hoped that someone, anyone, would stop by and assist after being rejected by the very people whose lives he defended every day of his life. Kami eventually got sick of hearing this lonely and heartbroken child's prayer. At last, Kami made the decision to take action. Kami said, "Shinigami, come forth." In front of Kami, an almost humanoid apparition materialized and then solidified. The figure's sickly purple skin was concealed by a long white robe. With two protruding horns and a mane of wild white hair, its head resembled that of a demon, in addition to having a mouth full of rows of razor-sharp teeth and a knife held inside the mouth that was used to cut at a person's soul. The specter's face was grotesque, with eyes black as pitch, irises white as snow, and pupils that could look into a person's very soul. A string of rosary beads was worn around its grotesque, clawed hands. The Shinigami said, "You called for me, Kami-sama?" "Yes, I am in need of 2 souls that are in your possession, Shinigami. More specifically, I need 2 souls that are currently residing inside your stomach." The Shinigami gazed at Kami icily. "The souls that are in my possession are mine to keep. The humans that are sealed within me are mine to keep for all eternity, to fight in my stomach. That is the deal set out by the dead demon-consuming seal." Kami took the god of death by the neck and raised it to his eye level. As the Shinigami was about to finish speaking, the Shinigami started to gasp for air, even though it didn't need to breathe because of Kami's glare, which was delivered with an authority that only the creator of reality could control, and the tightening grip around its throat. Following that statement, Kami let go of the Shinigami, letting it fall to the ground without any ceremony. "Let us get one thing straight, Shinigami. Your job is to ferry the souls of the departed to their final resting place and to hold the souls that are given to you until I say otherwise. It is ultimately I who has power over life and death, and not you. It is I that tells you when it is time for someone to pass, and it is I that will ultimately decide to use the souls that you have as I see fit. Do not forget your place." The Shinigami replied, rubbing its aching neck and fighting the urge to complain, "As you command, Kami-sama. Which 2 souls are you in need of?" As it phased its gory hand into its stomach and extracted 2 souls, the Shinigami appeared unconcerned by the request. "I require the souls of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze." Every soul resembled a piece of tissue paper with a human cutout on it. After capturing the 2 souls and driving the Shinigami away, Kami focused on his own souls. The two souls vanished in two distinct columns of light and made their way directly to Earth after saying, "The two of you are needed again on Earth. I have listened to your child's prayers for the past 5 years, and I have wept at the circumstances of his life. It is my hope that, with a family that will love and nurture him, that he will be able to become the man he is destined to be." At the Hokage Tower, Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his desk. He was currently filling out paperwork, which had become his worst enemy. At 15 minutes after 8 o'clock in the evening, Hiruzen took a break from the endless stack of mission reports, forms, and other paperwork to look out over the village. It was then that he thought of a certain Naruto Uzumaki and how the elderly Hokage felt that he had wronged the boy in the most terrible way imaginable. Regardless of Hiruzen's perspective, he was aware that he had failed Naruto. At the time of his birth, the village was expected to view him as a hero. After all, the village was only surviving the Kyuubi no Yoko's destruction as a burning heap of ash because of Naruto's very existence to ensure the village's safety. His successor Minato Namikaze sacrificed his life, his family, and his very soul in exchange. He only wanted his son Naruto to be regarded as a hero. Regretfully, that did not occur. When the villagers saw Naruto, they did not perceive a child. They could only make out the monster that had killed and destroyed the village 5 years prior. But instead of openly opposing him, the villagers took an even more heinous step. They chose to ignore him. It was obvious to Hiruzen that the boy had been neglected. Naruto resisted any attempts for outside assistance, stating that he wasn't important enough, was extremely polite, never asked for anything, and displayed numerous other indications that he wasn't given enough respect without anyone endorsing Naruto and reporting any of this. Hiruzen was powerless to take any action for fear that a close relationship with Naruto would compromise his authority. It's true that Hiruzen made an effort to communicate with Naruto more frequently, but he was unable to do more for him because of his work as Hokage and the 3 damaged paperwork. Hiruzen had little choice but to accept that as a pitiful excuse. He was still fairly well respected, but he just didn't command the same level of respect as he had when he was younger. Hiruzen knew he could never completely fill the void, no matter how much he wanted to, and all he could do was hope Naruto could find someone to do so. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed what seemed to be 2 lines of light in the night sky that descended and landed in 2 different places inside the village. One seemed to strike the Yondaime Hokage's forehead, while the other fell in or close to the cemetery. 2 male Anbu captains appeared and knelt before their commanding officer immediately after the unexplained occurrence. One wore a snake's mask, the other a dog's. Habi, Inu, report, Hokage-sama, we have received word of 2 unidentified energy sources descending upon the Konoha Cemetery and the tomb of the Yondaime Hokage. No damage has yet to be reported, and we have yet to identify the phenomenon. There doesn't appear to be an immediate threat. We have no more information at this time, Habi replied. Hiruzen turned to face Habi and Inu. Can we confirm what those phenomenons were at this time? This time, Inu answered, not at this time. Hokage-sama, all we can gather so far was that they were some form of energy, but they did not behave like chakra or any other known form of energy. However, most of our Anbu felt a pressure similar to high amounts of chakra, so that energy might be related, but we cannot confirm that. Hiruzen thought about the first report. A mysterious energy that behaved similarly to chakra but in a different way struck a cemetery and the tomb of one of the village's most powerful shinobi. Hiruzen sensed that something significant was going to occur, but he was unable to identify what it might be. The 2 Anbu members nodded and then departed in a flurry of leaves to assemble their teams to examine the locations. I want 1 squad each sent to the tomb and the cemetery. I want to know just what in the bloody hell is going on here, immediately, they said. When Minato Namikaze woke up, his first thought was that he was still alive and, presumably, on a slab inside a cave of some kind, still wearing the uniform he had on the night he had defeated the 9-tailed demon fox. That wasn't supposed to be the case. His final recollection was of looking down at his newborn son while using the dead demon-consuming seal to defeat the Kyuubi no Yoko. He was certain that his son would receive good treatment, even though he was well aware that using the seal would cost him his soul. He did leave Naruto in the capable hands of his sensei and his remaining student, even though he was aware that he might face different treatment once he learned about the fox and his connection to it. Despite everything, Minato was concerned. What on earth is happening here? I should not be on a slab in some cave, but in the stomach of the Shinigami. I must see what's happening here. Surprised that he wasn't as rigid as a board, Minato got up off the slab and ran to what he believed to be the entrance. He tried to run, but his legs gave out and he landed on his side. Minato whispered to himself, note to self. Walk before you run when you don't know how long it has been since you last used your legs. He made another attempt at running, this time with greater success, as soon as he was able to walk around and regain his ability to support his weight. Following the existing corridor, he ascended the staircase at an increasingly rapid pace. Reaching the summit, He peered out of the gap to see the remainder of the village he had vowed to defend. He pushed some chakra into his feet to climb his head and gaze out from atop what he could only assume was the Hokage monument in order to gain a better understanding of what was happening. For want of a better word, Minato was perplexed. The village appeared nearly unaltered from his point of view. Minato had not noticed any signs of destruction, and not a single building appeared to be in disarray. The nine-tailed demon fox's attack seemed to have never happened. On the other hand, Minato could plainly see the new tree growth outside the village walls, which he knew was the location of the fox's rampage. There were only two possible outcomes from this enormous contradiction. Either Minato had been revived, or he had dozed off and the Kyuubi attack had been a nightmare. Minato dismissed the latter right away because she was shocked by what was happening. A group of Anbu surrounded him. Before he could think further about the unusual circumstance, he found himself in. Minato identified 4 shinobi: a turtle, a bull, a tiger mask, and what he believed to be the captain in a dog mask. Minato was instantly drawn to the one with the gray hair that defied gravity. In the dog mask, there was only one person he knew with that type of hair. This was confirmed by the masked shinobi, who unsheathed his ninjutsu and started talking. To show how serious the man was, the masked shinobi added a drop of venom and some killing intent to his question. Who are you, and why are you impersonating the late Yondaime Hokage? Minato appeared a little perplexed. What are you talking about, Kakashi? I am the Yondaime, remember, your sensei Minato? Did his own pupil truly believe he was a fake? Minato's question was promptly addressed by Kakashi. Kakashi was becoming agitated with whoever it was that dared to disrespect his sensei's memory by posing as him. I will ask again. Why are you impersonating Minato Namikaze? You have 5 seconds to respond. Otherwise we will use whatever force necessary to subdue you. Minato knew he needed to move quickly. A seasoned Anbu squadron surrounded him, and his former pupil thought he was a fraud. He did not currently possess any of his tri-pronged kunai, so using the Hiruzen no jutsu was not an option. The Rasengan was left. He was aware that would reveal who he was. Minato moved swiftly, gathering chakra in his hands and forming it into his trademark, a ranked move. He hoped the technique had only been known by Kakashi and his sensei Jiraiya themselves. Kakashi dropped his weapon when he saw the technique for which his sensei was renowned. Only 3 individuals that he was aware of were capable of using that technique, although he preferred to use his own unique technique, the lightning cutter. Kakashi himself could execute the technique while gallivanting around Hai no Kuni in search of ideas for his next bestseller. Only one person remained capable of performing that particular jutsu. Minato sensei? Kakashi asked, taking off his mask to reveal his amazed face, which was concealed by a Konoha Hite over his left eye and a cloth face mask. This was not supposed to be possible, and he knew it for sure. He had been present when the Kyuubi went on the rampage. He was positive that the 4th Hokage of Konoha had been interred in one of the nation's most secure cemeteries. He noticed the corpse. How, then, could this have happened? His dead sensei was standing in front of him using his signature technique. How could he be alive and well? Minato smiled slightly at his pupil. I know you must have a lot of questions, believe me, so do I. Unfortunately, I don't have any answers right now. There's a lot of questions that I need answered, and right now only the reigning Hokage can give those to us. How about if we pay whoever is in charge a visit? Sure, but for the record, sensei, the Sandaime Hokage took over for you after your, demise? Minato laughed, and then he and Kakashi, as well as the 3 astonished Anbu under Kakashi's leadership, jumped to the Hokage's office. They experienced a chakra surge near the cemetery. On their way there, both Kakashi and Minato recognized the signature. Turning, Kakashi faced his sensei. Sensei, you don't think? After responding, Minato laughed to himself in a way that was half humorous and half sad. That I was the only one that seems to be defying the laws of life and death tonight? Nope, he said. I would say that the red-hot-blooded habanero might have also gotten a wake-up call. This was verified when 2 ninjas were spotted flying away from the cemetery's direction, with the only words that could be made out being red, angry, and woman. Both men felt a chill go down their spines because they knew exactly who was most likely responsible for the 2 saps' assisted flight. Upon opening her eyes, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze saw dozens and dozens of urns arranged in rows on shelves, each labeled with a name. She could immediately determine that she was most likely in the Konoha Cemetery's crematorium. However, as soon as she figured out where she was, 3 questions sprang to mind. 1. What was she doing in Konoha, inside an ash-filled building? 2. Where had her husband or son gone? 3. How could she possibly have been as nude as the day she was born? She could figure out the first answer. Perhaps her remains had been here, since she was supposed to be dead, but that didn't explain why she wasn't a pile of ash. When she realized she was dead, she started to recall the night she gave birth to her son and the events that followed. She remembered what had happened next. A man who, based on his appearance, she thought was Uchiha had entered, made her release the seal that held the Kyuubi no Yoko, and then, using her remaining strength, she infused some of her special chakras into the seal Minato had prepared to stop the Kyuubi. Even though it was implausible, the only response she could think of to the final question was that she had been raised from the dead in some way and that, in some way, resurrections did not produce garments for the dead. She wanted to cry, but she had to learn what was happening first, and more importantly, who had survived the attack by the Kyuubi no Yoko. She was about to look for something to cover herself when she heard someone inquire about her well-being. 3 fully uniformed male Anbu were staring at her. When she turned around, she deduced that the masks depicted a snake, a monkey, and a Baku. The way they were built, she knew they were men. She became aware that they were staring at her directly, so she did what she naturally did as a naked woman right now. Perverts. She appeared to have activated a celestial gate as her hair blew in a wild fashion around her, sending 2 of the elite ninja flying through the roof as Kushina stalked towards the last Anbu, who looked to be the captain based on the white cloak he was wearing. He was sweating profusely and demonstrated that he was going to get a severe beating by cracking her knuckles. After 15 minutes, Yugao Izuki, the final team member dispatched to look into the situation, noticed a woman leaving in a shirt and black pants that were clearly not hers. After hearing the cries of perverts, 15-year-old Anbu changed her mind about helping her teammates. When her 2 teammates were sent flying, sobbing over some scary red woman or something, it was evident that this was a smart move. If this woman was the one they were sent to look into, Yugao had assumed that she was the one who had eliminated her 2 teammates and, if she was not mistaken, her team captain. She defended herself from the woman and tried to sound more assured than she actually was. Halt. State your business, ma'am. Kushina looked thoughtfully at the young Anbu. Look, kid, I'm sorry if I scared you, but I don't respond all that well to perverts who gawk at a naked woman's body. Don't worry, I'm not gonna hurt you, Bane. After a brief moment of reflection, Yugao relaxed. I apologize, ma'am, I am simply doing my job. I know, and don't worry, I won't attack you. By the way, please don't call me, ma'am. It makes me feel old. Please call me Kushina. Hi, ma. I mean, Kushina-san. So, is there a reason that you were in the crematorium? I'm not entirely sure, but I think I may need to speak with Hokage-sama. Something tells me that he may hold more answers for me than I can give you. Is that acceptable? Without knowing what had happened or the gears that had been set in motion, Yugao nodded and started to guide the red-haired woman to the Hokage tower. The scene in front of him was not what Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, the professor, and the god of shinobi had anticipated when his Anbu returned with their investigations. Minato Namikaze, his immediate predecessor and successor, was in front of him. He was still wearing his Jonin uniform, flak jacket, and white coat with the kanji for 4th Hokage written on the back, the same outfit that Hiruzen had last seen him wearing 5 years prior. When he was buried, Hiruzen appeared to be gazing at a ghost. Indeed, even the Hokage found it difficult to believe his eyes when he saw the yellow flash of Konoha. Minato-san, is that you? I get the feeling that I will be getting that a lot lately. Yes, it is me. Sarutobi-sama, I could prove it to you, if you wish. No, that will not be necessary. I trust Kakashi-san's judgment. If he says you are you, I am inclined to trust him, although I am curious as to how you could be alive when you were sent to the Shinigami's belly. Minato gave a shrug. I wish I could tell you. Honestly, all I remember is the ceiling. The next thing you know, I'm waking up on a stone slab inside the monument. Hiruzen thought about it. To the best of his knowledge, it was impossible to extract a soul from the death god's belly. The summoning impure world resurrection technique was released. However, it would have needed to circumvent the Shinigami issue and necessitated a body sacrifice. It was impossible to transform. If Kakashi was right, no one could use a Rasengan to fake. The only inference that could be made from all of this, if the evidence was combined with the fact that the room where the body was kept was empty, was that a force stronger than the Shinigami had brought the Yondaime back to life. Even though the professor thought that was a nonsensical response, it was the only one that made sense. As radical as this may sound, the only conclusion that I can draw, Minato-san, is that this was an act of kami, or at the very least, of a power greater than the Shinigami. Kakashi was taken aback. Are you trying to say? Hiruzen gave a nod. Yes. This was clearly an intervention by Kami-sama. As for what reason, I am not sure. There simply is no way that I am aware of to explain this otherwise. In layman's terms, this can only be described as a miracle. The rest of the room was in disbelief. Seldom would anything ever be considered a miracle, even in the world of ninjas. Whether it was a seal, a jutsu, or some natural phenomenon, almost anything that occurred could be explained. Saying something was a miracle was a wake-up call for someone like Hiruzen, who had seen and done almost everything that was possible. It demonstrated that even the brightest minds were not infallible. That specific realization had just taken hold when two females walked into the Hokage's office. One was Anbu Yugao Azuki, a woman with purple hair. She was accompanied by a red-haired beauty dressed in what looked like the armorless uniform of a male Anbu member. She was instantly identified as Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, Minato Namikaze's wife and the final survivor of Uzu no Kuni. It was a little overwhelming for Kakashi to see her in person after assuming it was her at the cemetery. Not only had his sensei returned to his life, but his sensei's wife had as well. Hiruzen found himself tempted to check his tobacco again to make sure he was smoking the correct kind and that it wasn't laced with a hallucinogen. The other Anbu decided not to do anything needless in case they were given a one-way ticket out of Konoha after recalling witnessing two of their comrades take off. Minato's joy was uncontrollable. He recalled how devastated he was at the thought that Naruto might grow up alone and how he discovered her dying shortly after the seal was released and she had given her chakra for it. Seeing his true love, who was as beautiful and radiant as the day he married her, standing in front of him, even her smile reminded me of simpler, better days when choosing the color to paint the nursery for their unborn child was the biggest challenge. Minato went to give his wife a hug, not really anticipating the reaction he received. Minato, you baka! Kushina punched Minato in the face as soon as she discovered him in the Hokage's office. That was for leaving your pregnant wife unprotected, she said, stifling her tears with a weaker punch. Just as everyone was about to bury Minato again, she put her head on his shoulder and embraced him. That was for using a seal that cost us our souls. And this, she said. She started crying quietly on his shoulder, tears of happiness, frustration, and sorrow streaming down her cheeks. This is for leaving me alone in the afterlife while you were fighting inside the Shinigami. She was separated in another area of the Shinigami's stomach. Despite the fact that her chakra had been used for a portion of the seal, she hadn't even been able to see her beloved for the previous 5 years to make up for lost time. Minato just kept holding the love of his life. Hiruzen made the decision to end the heartwarming reunion. I don't mean to be rude, Kushina-chan, but do you have an idea of how you are here? Somehow, Minato was also brought back to us, but your body had been cremated once we found you. Kushina gave a blink. Kushina's eyes widened in recognition as he said, I honestly don't know. I woke up in the crematorium surrounded by Anbu. The last thing I remember before that was holding my son and... Kushina nearly went into a frenzy before Minato calmed her down. Naruto. What happened to my son? She exclaimed. Don't worry, Kushina-ko, I'm sure Naruto is fine. Who knows, maybe Jiraiya-sensei is trying to use him to meet some women. Minato joked. Minato started to laugh and then noticed that the room had become extremely quiet. Am I right, Sarutobi-sama? She asked with a look of regret written on his hidden face and a look on the Hokage's face that seemed to reveal his actual age, complete with weary eyes that reflected the aging soul within. The reunited couple had turned to see Kakashi staring at the floor. The 4 Anbu members vanished after the Hokage dismissed them, saying, Ushi, Neko, Tora, and Kappa. The 4 of you were dismissed. I would suggest going to find Saru, Habi, and Baku. They may or may not need medical attention. Then Hiruzen looked at Kakashi. Kakashi, if you would be so kind as to retrieve Naruto and bring him here, I would appreciate it. Kakashi turned to face his boss, though he didn't intend to be late for meetings as he usually was. Kakashi sensed that the Sandaime might require some alone time with Kushina and Minato. Do you wish for me to get him here quickly, or do you want me to take my time? He asked. Hiruzen appreciated Kakashi's inquiry and understood what he was hinting at. Hiruzen saw that it was 8:30 and said, try to bring him here at 9:15. That should be enough time to explain what is going on and catch these two up on current events. Kakashi nodded and leapt out of the Hokage's window. Just take your time, Kakashi. I have a feeling I may be a little while. I will have to catch these two up on certain events, so just take your time. Try to bring him back. Well, Hiruzen said. Hiruzen turned back to Minato and Kushina as soon as Kakashi had gone. His hat nearly obscured his face as he put his elbows on the table and rested his chin on his hands. He noticed the anxious and concerned expressions on the faces of the two parents as he looked at them in the room. Minato made the decision to speak for the couple. Minato was uneasy and asked, Hiruzen, what is going on? Where is our son? He informed Hiruzen of his plan in advance, and he instructed Jiraiya to look after Naruto in the event that something happened to him and Kushina, his godfather, as his last act as Hokage. Minato also restored Hiruzen, and it was Minato's final desire for Naruto to be regarded as a hero. Minato believed that to be quite obvious had something occurred. What I have to tell the two of you I know will be upsetting, but I will have to ask for minimal interruptions. It will be hard enough as is to tell you what has been going on without being interrupted. Can I trust that the two of you will allow me to do that much? Kushina begged. Just tell us about our son, Sarutobi-sama, please. Hiruzen let out a sigh in an attempt to release some of the tension that had built up inside of him. I suppose I should start at the beginning. As you can tell from the fact that the village is still standing, the sealing was a complete success. The fox was defeated and successfully sealed into Naruto. Unfortunately, things began to start going downhill shortly afterwards. 2 days after the rampage, we received reports from one of our patrols that stated that Iwagakure no Sato and the Sandame Tsuchikage, Onoki of both scales, sent a squad to inspect Konoha and assess our ability to defend ourselves after the attack by the Kyuubi. We eliminated the squad, but Jiraiya and I agreed early on that it would be for the best at the time not to reveal Naruto's heritage. We knew that word would eventually spread of your demise, Minato. If word ever got out that you had a son, Naruto would have had a larger target on his back than what was already painted on due to his tenant. Shortly after we decided on a course of action, Jiraiya left the village to maintain his spy network in the hopes that he would be able to return and train Naruto when he reached the rank of genin and would be able to fight for himself. After we took care of the Iwa patrol, I convened an emergency meeting consisting of the clan heads, the heads of all the village departments, and my advisors, who represented the interests of both the civilians and the rest of the population here in Konoha. I described what happened the night of the attack to everyone. At first, there were a few individuals that called for his death, mostly in some of the smaller departments within the ninja ranks. After those individuals were dealt with, Jiraiya and I calmly explained to everyone the function of the seal you used to the best of our collective knowledge. Any further protests for his death were quickly suppressed. Regrettably, this led to a new argument led by my former teammates, Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Utatane, as well as my former rival, Danzo Shimura. Homura and Kaharu were wary of allowing Naruto to continue to be in the village out of a fear that he might make Konoha an even larger target for the other nations due to his status as a Jinchuriki. However, they quickly agreed with Danzo, after he suggested that it would be in our best interests to enroll Naruto in an early shinobi training program. I quickly saw that it was an attempt to turn Naruto into a weapon. Like hell, they would turn my son into a mindless killing machine like the other Jinchuriki. I'd sooner be burned alive by Amaterasu's flames before that would happen. T.T. Ibane said. Kushina was somewhat more sympathetic to the predicament of all demon containers because he was the fox's former Jinchuriki. Fortunately, Minato was able to soothe her enough to let Hiruzen finish. However, Minato had to acknowledge that he was also considering taking drastic measures. After allowing Kushina to finish her tirade, Hiruzen went on. As I was saying, they attempted to turn him into a weapon, but I quickly stamped that idea out. I knew that neither one of you would want that for Naruto. There were also offers to take Naruto into some of the other clans, but I worried that giving a clan power over him might lead to trouble later, so I had to decline those requests. In the end, I set up a decree that no one was to speak of his identity as a Jinchuriki to anyone who was not around or able to remember the Kyuubi's attack. However, I suspect that someone might have leaked his status to the village anyway. Thankfully, no one dared to attack Naruto, even though most held resentment for containing the very beast that took away so many lives. Hiruzen paused. He seemed to be struggling to find the courage to vocalize his thoughts. Minato quickly saw through this and posed the question that had been bothering him. Hiruzen, what happened to our son? You said that he wasn't attacked, so I assumed that is a good thing, right? Hiruzen gazed at Minato with eyes filled with sorrow from years of suffering. I cannot lie to either of you. What they did to Naruto was far crueler. When word got out about what Naruto had become, he was shunned by the rest of the village. No one except for me, as far as I am aware of, even acknowledge his existence. Because Jiraiya was out of the village, and Kakashi was too young and was too involved with Enbu to take care of a child, Naruto was dumped off at the orphanage. I cannot be absolutely sure, but I highly suspect he was severely neglected by his caretakers. I suspect that he was neglected in the hopes that he would either run away from the village, or that he would simply fade out of existence, like a bad memory. He is overly polite, suffers from an inferiority complex, and probably has many emotional scars. I know I should have taken better care of him, but bureaucratic red tape and my work as Hokage keep me from being a predominant figure in his life. Granted, I have been able to see him on occasion and have offered many times to try and get him to come with me to Ichiraku ramen with me, but every time I offer he tells me, and I quote, "You don't need to waste your money on someone as unimportant as me. I'm sure you got plenty of people that you could spend that money on." I can only begin to imagine what sort of garbage they have been filling his mind with. Hiruzen finished and took a look up to see the faces of his predecessor, successor, and his wife. Kushina was torn between sobbing and crying or stomping out of that office and finishing what the Kyuubi had begun. Hearing that the child you gave birth to, the very child you sacrificed your life to protect, was not only rejected by your entire surrogate family, but that he was also told that his existence was pointless and that he was not deserving of even the most basic of necessities or acts of kindness was infuriating. She hoped that someone would care for Naruto, but it seems that the fox's hatred went beyond respect for a dying man's final request, even one as revered as Minato's. In contrast, Minato seemed composed, but he harbored what could only be described as parental rage. The only thing he asked for in return for giving up his life, his family, and everything he owned to save the village was for his son to be hailed as a hero for taking on the role of the demon fox's prisoner. Rather, they inflict emotional suffering on his child that no one should ever experience and spit on his memory. Although he was aware that they were unaware that Naruto was his son, the village's collective behavior was still unacceptable. He would have taken his wife and son, abandoned Konoha to burn, and moved to a village like Suna or Kumo. If he had been any less of a man, if nothing else, they would have respected Minato and his family more. Hiruzen made an effort to express regret for his failure. Minato-san, I cannot even begin to tell you how sorry I am for all of this. I know I am not much better than the villagers, and I can understand if you won't forgive me. Minato surprised Hiruzen by raising his hand and then softening his features a little. Hiruzen, I don't blame you for what has happened to my son. If anyone is at fault here, it is the village. All that I asked was that Naruto be seen as a hero instead of the monster he imprisons, and yet they could not even manage that. Minato went to the window next to Hiruzen. Did any of the clans try to help Naruto after they offered to adopt him? Regrettably, I am not entirely sure anyone saw him once he was in the orphanage. I know that I would have an Anbu give me a quick analysis of what he or she was able to observe whenever they saw Naruto during their patrols around the village, but I am unaware of anyone who was able to interact with him, and I am fairly certain that he never left the orphanage to explore the town. He probably didn't want to leave the only home he had ever known. Minato turned to face his house. He was raised here, where he met his Crimson Whirlpool, where he became a ninja and eventually a Hokage, and where he intended to raise his family. When had his household grown so intolerable to other people's miseries? At what point had his village devolved into a place where a child was held accountable for a burden that had never been placed upon him? The will of fire that divided Konoha from the other villages was nowhere to be found. His heart told him that his actions would not alter the events that transpired or the perception of him as a monster. Despite his mind's current urge to seize his son and flee, Minato was aware that Naruto could not recover from the hell he had endured as a child unless he was accepted by the village, regardless of how repulsive it may seem to him. Hiruzen, I have a favor to ask. In an optimistic tone, Hiruzen said. Yes, Minato-san, what do you need? For a brief moment, Minato remained silent, seemingly reiterating his choice to himself before fortifying himself. As soon as I get settled, I wish to retake my position as Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. Kushina was the first to speak. Are you out of your mind? Minato-kun, I know you love this village, and I love you more than I love my salt ramen, but if you think for 1 second that I am going to let Naruto continue to live in the place that tortured him, then you. Kushina. Minato noticed the tone, which left her speechless. I'm sorry for yelling, Kushina-koi, but I know exactly what you are about to say, and I agree with you 100%. If I thought it would help Naruto, I would leave this Kami-forsaken village and let it be burned by the next group of missing nin that decided to attack it. That being said, I don't think it would help Naruto if we were to take him away. The treatment he received will forever be justified in his heart. Naruto is the way he is because he has been told that he is not worth anything. If he is to ever heal, he will need to gain the acceptance of this village. In other words, he will have to prove himself in the eyes of the village that told him he had not worth. Kushina and Minato knew that what he said made sense. Even though it hurt them both, gaining the acceptance of others would be necessary for Naruto to ever recover from this experience. Observing their determination to remain, Minato and Kushina kept listening to Hiruzen as he narrated significant events that they had missed while they were away. Etsuko was starting to go around ensuring the children were in their rooms was one of her responsibilities during the night at the Konoha orphanage. She had her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail braid. She would look into each room with her glasses, which appeared to be in dire need of cleaning, to make sure the child assigned to that room was still there. She was only in her early 20s, but because of a birth defect that left one leg weaker than the other, she had to use a cane to walk. She decided to use a cane because the hospital's medical ninjas were at a loss for what to do. It wouldn't really matter. Caring for children in an orphanage didn't exactly pay well, and something had to give if she needed to cover medical expenses. She started to head to the attic to see how Naruto Uzumaki was doing after seeing how the other kids were doing. Despite being present during the Kyuubi attack, Etsuko found it difficult to accept Naruto as a monster. She was a civilian by birth and upbringing and had never been married. She had heard rumors about Naruto, but she couldn't see how one child was the reincarnation of a monster that could cause earthquakes and tsunamis, aside from the birthmarks on his cheeks. She made every effort to assist Naruto whenever she could, but her supervisor, who was the owner of the orphanage, would frequently threaten to fire her if she did anything other than what was absolutely required to keep Naruto alive during the night. When they discovered that she had been teaching him to read and write, she nearly lost her job. She was devastated, but she had no choice but to follow instructions and hope that someone would rescue Naruto from his nightmare in order to keep her job. A knock on the front door cut short her thoughts. Normally, during the day, prospective parents or those with orphans would visit. She knew that only Ninja would show up at night as expected. One of the Hokage's Anbu was waiting outside the door when she opened it. Etsuko whispered, "Hello, Anbu-san, what can I do for you this evening?" The last thing she wanted was for someone to hear her. The silver-haired Anbu said, "In fact, Hokage-sama has requested to see Naruto. Is he still awake?" "I believe so, although I haven't checked up on him yet." "Why, is something wrong?" "No, it's nothing like that. The Hokage simply wishes to talk to Naruto." "Do you need any help, miss?" "Etsuko, Anbu-san, and no, I will be fine. May I ask if you will be returned tonight?" Kakashi sensed that this woman was interested in Naruto, and he also sensed that his sensei might want to speak with her. "I am not sure, but my guess will be that he will not. If you want, I may be able to arrange a meeting with Naruto tomorrow. I am sure Hokage-sama would not mind." Etsuko turned around and headed up the stairs to the attic, saying, "I would like that. I will be right back." She walked in after knocking on the door. Naruto was seated on the bed before her. Seeing Naruto like this, curled up on his bed, feeling as low as the dirt beneath his feet, crushed her heart. Etsuko questioned whether she was in the right profession after witnessing a simple child reduced to this state and letting someone like Naruto endure such suffering. To check if he was still awake, she chose to shake his shoulder. "Naruto, are you awake?" When Naruto opened his eyes, Etsuko was there. "Hello, Etsuko-san, did you come to see if I was asleep?" "Actually, I came to see if you were awake. One of the Hokage's Anbu is here to take you to see him." "What makes someone like me desirable to the Hokage? Will Kami use this as an opportunity to point out my mistakes?" Naruto pondered. "Alright, although I don't really have anything appropriate to wear in front of the Hokage." Etsuko smiled sadly. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement and was led to the Hokage by the Anbu. "I'm sure you won't mind, Naruto. I'm not sure when you will be returning, so the Anbu offered to let me come see you tomorrow, okay?" Naruto followed Kakashi into Hiruzen's office. When Naruto first walked in, he saw the Hokage dressed in his usual uniform along with two other people. A blonde-haired, blue-eyed man wearing a white coat and a ninja uniform was the first because some of the prospective parents who had entered the orphanage were wearing uniforms. Naruto had previously seen a ninja's uniform. The other was a stunning woman wearing a black shirt and trousers. With violet eyes and red hair. The uniform she was wearing didn't exactly fit her, even though she was a shinobi. When Hiruzen saw Naruto come in, he made an effort to smile for the boy. "Ah, Naruto, how are you tonight?" Naruto bowed in deference. "Just fine, Hokage-sama. Is there a reason I am here, Hokage-sama?" "Well, Naruto, I wish to introduce you to two very important people. Do you remember some of the stories I told you about the fourth Hokage?" Naruto then had a clear view of the man in the room. "Yes, Hokage-sama, you told me he was seen as a hero in the village for stopping the Kyuubi no Yoko. Is this man related to the fourth?" Trying to be delicate, Hiruzen took a deep breath. "Naruto, do you believe in miracles?" "Of course, Hokage-sama," replied Naruto. "Even though they never happen to someone as ordinary as me, I believe that miracles can happen." "Well, as hard as this may be to believe, Naruto, this is the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and his wife, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze. They were somehow brought back from the dead." Kushina and Minato were attempting to ascertain Naruto's current level of comprehension. They were hoping for a smile or some other similar response to convey amazement or awe, but instead they got a confused expression. They were intrigued by this until Naruto started talking. Naruto looked perplexed as he said, "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, but why am I here then? Aren't there other, more important people that need to know that he and his wife are alive? I'm sure I am not one of the people that needed to know about this first." Hiruzen chose to reveal the shocking information. "Actually, Naruto, you're the person I needed to tell first because these two, one being one of the most respected people in the village, are your parents." Minato and Kushina anticipated a range of responses, including joy at having a family, resentment at being abandoned, or even Naruto passing out from shock. They received disbelief, which they hadn't anticipated. Glancing down, Naruto started to refute the professor's words. "That can't be right. Hokage-sama, I am not special enough to have a family, let alone to have someone that Kami-sama thought needed to be brought back from the dead as my parents. Besides, I'm too ugly, stupid, slow, and ordinary for anyone to want me." It was the last straw for Minato and Kushina to hear Naruto so demeaning himself. The first to respond was Minato, who embraced Naruto unaccustomed to the intimate touch. Naruto froze in Minato's grasp. A person ruffling his hair was the closest he ever got to making intimate contact with anyone. Naruto sputtered, Why Yondaime-sama, what are you doing? Minato simply embraced him. A finger on Naruto's lips prevented him from spitting out a denial. I'm hugging my son, what does it look like I am doing, Naruto? Said Naruto. Listen to me, what the Hokage said was true. I am your dad, and this is your mom Kushina. We're sorry we left, Naruto, but even we couldn't escape the Shinigami, although it would seem Kami-sama might have needed us. Even though his mind was disproving it, Naruto made one final effort to reject what his heart was refusing to deny. But I'm just an ordinary, not special kid. I. This time, the woman who is now known as Kushina embraced Naruto from behind. If Naruto could see her face, he would see a comforted expression. But you are special, Naruto. You are our handsome, well-behaved, most special son we could ever ask for, and we both love you very much, Ibane. Naruto experienced two emotions as he was held by the two individuals. No, his parents. That he could not remember experiencing in his brief life. He experienced a sense of specialness and belonging. All of his prayers and his hopes that one day someone would want him seemed insignificant in comparison to the warmth and sincerity he sensed from the man and woman who were now surrounding him. When Naruto was overcome by emotion, he did what any child would do. He clung to his father and let out all of the annoyance, loneliness, suffering, and agony that had afflicted him during his 5 years of existence. Instead of pressing him for an answer, Minato and Kushina simply held him. After giving his all, Naruto collapsed in Minato's embrace, the blonde child suffering from the emotional roller coaster. The only thing Hiruzen could do was wipe away the few tears that trickled down his old cheeks. In the last hour or so, a lot had transpired that he knew would alter Konoha, either positively or negatively. Minato, I believe it might be for the best if you and your family sleeps here in one of the tower's bedrooms tonight. The council is convening a meeting tomorrow, so we can introduce and reinstate you to your proper position. With Kushina by his side and Naruto in his arms, Minato nodded and departed. The contented expression on his son's face contrasted with the tear stains he had previously noticed with Naruto in the middle of the two of them. Minato and Kushina laid their son down on the bed and went to sleep, knowing that they had a long journey ahead of them. Even without considering the psychological harm that must be deeply embedded in his mind, Naruto's brief introduction to their son revealed that he had received treatment that could take months or even years to completely heal. You can relax, Naruto. With that, Minato Namikaze and his recently reunited family entered the realm of dreams. This will be the last night that you will go to sleep feeling worthless. It had been a pleasant dream for Naruto. In his dream, the fourth Hokage and his wife were his biological parents, and they had returned from the afterlife solely to reunite as a family. He had felt so safe that he could almost feel the warmth that had been given by his parents' double embrace. Even when everything else seems to be falling apart, he seemed to be in a dream. The kind that gives you hope for a better tomorrow. Dreams don't come true, and since they never did for him, he knew that everything would vanish as soon as he woke up. Only his typical thoughts of anguish and despair would give him any consistency. When he woke up in his attic back at the orphanage, that being said, he opened his eyes at last to start another day of his gloomy life. Naruto's first realization upon awakening was that he was not in his attic room. The interior of the room he was in was actually unfamiliar to him. He was wrapped in blankets and bed linens of a fine cotton that seemed to have been made for a king. All in all, the room was rather simple. The only furnishings were a dresser for clothes, a lampstand, and a bed with these sheets and bedding that were clearly designed for comfort and luxury. The curtains had a forest green color and the walls looked to be oak wood. The kanji for fire was displayed in red on a gray background on a mat on the floor. Naruto was just beginning to get over his amazement at what he thought was a room for kings when the door opened and the fourth Hokage and his wife appeared, carrying some bowls of rice and tea. While Minato was dressed in the same Jonin uniform as the previous evening, Kushina was dressed similarly, with the exception that the shirt underneath was red rather than blue. To confirm he was truly awake, Naruto squeezed himself. As if he believed that his parents would vanish if he didn't physically reassure himself of their existence, he practically pushed himself out of bed and went to embrace them once it was established that he was. Regretfully, as a child, he misjudged his speed and was able to topple Kushina and the plate of food she was carrying. There was a loud crash as the tea and bowls fell to the floor. Having dealt with irate adults in similar circumstances before, Naruto did what he was supposed to do. He immediately removed Kushina's form, bowed with his forehead on the ground in a submissive position, and waited to be addressed. Why did I have to make a mess of this? Why would anyone want a child who would sabotage such delicious food? They most likely had that for breakfast as well. Naruto was very anxious because he didn't want to lose his chance at a family because of his mistake. I hope they will still want me after I beg for forgiveness. He would have seen his mother's puzzled expression and his father's tiny frown if he had been looking up. His father said, "Naruto, what are you doing?" As far as the young boy could tell, he didn't seem angry with Naruto, which perplexed him because Naruto's actions were typically met with yelling and screaming or being pushed into his room without food. When Naruto realized he hadn't responded to the man who was regarded as one of the greatest ninja in history, he spat out an excuse in an attempt to appease the two adults present. Naruto kept his head down, waiting to be locked back into his room at the orphanage for the day or to have his meal privileges revoked. "I'm awaiting my punishment. Yandaime-sama. Kushina-sama, I ruined your meal, and broke your bowls and things." Knowing what he meant, Kushina had to stop herself from falling and bringing the entire Konoha orphanage building down on the head of whoever was in charge of Naruto's welfare somehow. He had been conditioned to believe that he would suffer consequences for an accident with some effort. She was able to pull Naruto into her kneeling lap and hold him close as her maternal instincts took over. "It's okay, Sochi, it was an accident. No one got hurt, and we have plenty more bowls and cups where those came from besides. Obviously my awesome ninja skills are a little rusty if I got knocked over and let everything break like that. TT Ibane, we're not mad. We're just glad you're okay." Kushina trailed off, assuring Naruto incorrectly. Meanwhile, Minato was watching the scene with a worried expression. Minato was a little concerned because it appeared that Naruto would require a lot of love and attention. If he were Hokage, he was concerned about whether he could give Naruto the attention he deserved because he knew he would be busy with the paperwork, managing the village, and other responsibilities that came with the title. He dismissed that idea with a shake of his head. He would find time to spend with his son. Nothing less was fair to Naruto. He bent over and gave Naruto and Kushina hugs. "Your mom's right, Naruto, what happened was just an accident, nothing more and nothing less. We don't punish kids for accidents. Sochi, now, why don't we all go and get something to eat? I think I know of some people that might be willing to feed a small family of 3 also. It's Otou-san and Ka-san. Not Yandaime-sama and Kushina-sama. When we are alone like this as a family, you don't need to be so formal. Only when you become a ninja and have to deal with the council or foreign dignitaries do you need to be so formal." Naruto could see the truth in his parents' eyes when he looked up into them. They genuinely did not feel angry with Naruto, which confused him because in all of his previous interactions with adults, he was held responsible for events like the one that just occurred. He had no choice but to keep holding on to his parents and soaking up their love. They were about to strengthen their bond when someone knocked on the door. Hiruzen and Kakashi in his Anbu uniform were there when Minato reluctantly broke off the embrace to open the door. "I am sorry to bother you, Minato, but the meeting will start in a few hours, and I thought it best to get you ready for that, knowing you would want to make an entrance." Minato cast a sorrowful glance at his relatives. Although he had been anticipating his first family meal, he knew he had to take care of this as soon as possible. He spoke quietly with Kushina, who appeared to concur that he had to accompany Hiruzen. Minato leaned over and met his son's bewildered gaze. "Don't worry, Naruto, the old man here just wants me to go meet some people to let them know about me and your mom. I promise I will be back for dinner tonight, and we will go and have a meal as a family. I really am sorry about this. Buddy, when we get back, we will have a great dinner, just the 3 of us, okay?" Naruto gave a head nod. Though he was depressed, he understood that his father only needed to inform everyone that he was still alive and that he wasn't being abandoned. In order to move freely with Hiruzen without being noticed, Minato used a transformation technique after saying goodbye to his family. Minato drew the 2 shinobi away as the 3 departed. He whispered a plan for his grand entrance into the ears of the Anbu captain and the elderly Sandame Hokage. "Hiruzen, I want the 2 of us to find where my space-time kunai ended up. Once we find them, I want Kakashi to go in ahead of us with a team, preferably of the same Anbu that saw me last night, and place those kunai underneath the seats in the room. I want to make it undeniable that I am who I say I am, and what better way than to use my signature jutsu." There were enough smirks on Hiruzen's and Kakashi's faces to make a Cheshire cat proud. The Konoha Council meeting room was full. Normally, Homura Mitokado and Kaharu Utatane, the village's 2 councillors, comprised the council. Additionally, each clan in Konoha would have representatives at high-priority meetings. Usually, the clan head would be present, but if needed, the head's spouse, heir, or heiress could step in. The village elders, led by Danzo Shimura, would also be present. The Konoha Council's ultimate objective was to support the Hokage in making choices that would benefit the village. Tension occasionally arises between the council and the Hokage as a result of disagreements between their opinions. The council would generally advise on decisions that would ultimately benefit Konoha, but it would also use any means necessary to achieve that goal, even if it meant taking drastic measures to solve a problem. Each of the major clans was represented, in addition to Danzo, Kaharu, and Homura. Shikaku Nara represented the Nara clan. Hiyashi Hyuga represented his clan. Sume Inuzuka represented her clan. Asuma Sarutobi represented his father's clan. Fugaku Uchiha represented the Uchiha, and Inoichi Yamanaka represented the Yamanaka clan. The Senju, Konoha's other founding clan, had no representatives because the last surviving member had left the village prior to the Kyuubi attack. Other ninja from different departments, such as the Niju Shotai and the head of the torture and interrogation department, who was currently working with an apprentice. Hiruzen Sarutobi, Anbu Captain Kakashi Hitaki, and 3 other Anbu were in the room when the doors opened. Hiruzen was dressed in full Hokage regalia. He appeared to have a playful sparkle in his eyes, resembling the expression a child might have when preparing to surprise their parents, with Homura and Kaharu at his sides and Kakashi in his usual Anbu position on the roof. He sat in his chair. There was a brief silence in the room. Hiruzen cleared his throat and declared the meeting open. Esteemed counselors, proud shinobi, and clan representatives, I call this meeting of the Konoha Council to order. That is, I would like to say that, but there are 2 problems with that. First, we are missing one important member of this council. Pardon me, said Danzo, but who are you referring to, Hokage-sama? Everyone is already here. I was getting to that, Danzo-san. As I was saying, first we are missing one individual, and second, I no longer hold the power to call these meetings to order. Everyone stared at Hiruzen in confusion. Hokage-sama, unless I am mistaken, the Hokage always calls these meetings to order. Why are you saying that you no longer have that authority? Inoichi asked. That is a good question, Inoichi-san. I am saying that I no longer have authority because, as of this morning when I signed it as my last official act as Hokage, I am no longer of the title. The title of Hokage no longer rests with me. That is impossible, Hiruzen. Only the council can elect a new Hokage. You can name a successor, but we must approve of the individual. You do not have the authority. True, Homura-san, but I do have the authority to reinstate a former Hokage. When the professor produced a space-time kunai and threw it into the air, channeling chakra into the handle's seal, everyone was on the verge of doubting his sanity. A figure in a white robe caught the kunai in midair, spun around, and planted his feet firmly on the ground in a spectacular and familiar yellow flash. Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash of Konoha, emerged as the figure rose to its feet. There was enough silence in the room to hear the tiny buzzing of Shibi's insects. Fugaku and Hiyashi instantly used their dojutsu to see if there was any illusion or change of any kind. When none was found, people's jaws dropped. Minato Namikaze was somehow in front of some of the most notable people in Konohagakure no Sato. The room was filled with cheers, tears, and general expressions of amazement and happiness. Minato couldn't help but smile. Even though he knew that there were people who were better than him, he had anticipated this kind of response. Although Minato was aware of his strength, he also understood that, since he was mortal, other people could still defeat him. In fact, if Hiruzen had been at his best, he would have been able to compete with Minato. One loudmouth in charge of Konoha's educational system decided to make the error of pointing out why Minato was there in the first place, interrupting his thoughts. Finally, the Yondaime Hokage has come to tell us how to properly dispose of the 9-tailed fox child, so we can be rid of the fox forever. A katana could cut through the tension in the air. It was sufficient to quickly silence the room, especially when combined with Minato's intention to kill. It would have been heard if someone had dropped a sebon. The man who spoke up was reprimanded by Danzo before Minato could appropriately explain his error. You fool! Obviously, Minato-sama has come back to properly show us how to utilize the weapon he created for us. A number of people started nodding their heads and muttering in agreement. Minato initially appeared to concur as well, that is, until he vanished in a flash of yellow and then reappeared from the left side with a kunai piercing Danzo's trachea. He looked to his left and saw Minato's frown, which made him look horrified. To whisper in Danzo's ear, Minato leaned closer. Rot in hell! Minato then kicked over Danzo's dead body, causing blood to pool around him. His bloody hand held Minato's space-time kunai. It's ironic that a man so afraid of death died so quickly. Anbu, get this piece of garbage out of my sight. Many of the people in the room were shocked when the Anbu took Danzo's body. Although Minato was a good-hearted person, most people had forgotten that he was also cunning and capable of killing without mercy. Following the Third Great Shinobi World War, Minato sat down and faced the rest of the room with a look of pure rage on his face as he sat in the Hokage's chair, which Hiruzen had given him right away following his display. Minato emphasized his point by driving his space-time kunai's blade into the wooden desk. Let me make one thing abundantly clear. Anyone who refers to Naruto Uzumaki as a demon, weapon, or any variation in my presence again will receive the same treatment. Village status be damned. Minato said everyone was smart enough to remember that irritating the Hokage was the one mistake one would never want to make. It would be the last thing you would ever do with someone as dangerous as Minato. Shikaku Nara had been interestedly examining Minato's discussion of the blonde Jinchuriki for the last minute or two. Minato was not a fool. When it came to Naruto, there was only one explanation for his actions. He assumed it should have been clear from the start, but like many men in his clan, he believed it was too bothersome to address at the time. Smiling, he made the decision to break the oppressive silence. If I may be so bold, Minato-sama, is there a particular reason you are acting particularly defensive over Naruto Uzumaki? Minato smiled. Shikaku had clearly figured things out, and it appeared that some others were starting to realize as well. He reasoned that this was the best moment to reveal the secret. Of course I am defensive, Shikaku-san. After all, what father doesn't want to protect his son? Minato would have been a billionaire by now if silence was gold. Every single face, with the exception of Hiruzen, Shikaku, and Kakashi, had an absolutely stunning expression that was invaluable. They didn't demonstrate it. If anyone had already assumed that what Minato said was the gospel, to put it mildly, it was shocking to consider that Minato could have a living heir. They were aware of her previous status as a Jinchuriki and that he had been seeing Kushina Uzumaki prior to the attack, but it seems that nobody questioned whether or not she was pregnant. Some of them looked thoughtful and perplexed, but others were just plain shocked. One shinobi chose to express his perplexity. But, Hokage-sama, I thought that the power of the fox would have destroyed his soul. How can he still be your son if his soul has been corrupted by the Kyuubi? Minato looked at him disbelievingly. People must know how seals operate, don't they? Could they genuinely think that Naruto was just a front for the fox? Minato noticed that some of the shinobi in the room were observing the surroundings in a similar way, which made him realize that nobody had given the seal's operation any thought. Of course, most people wouldn't want to listen, so it would be too simple to just explain what was happening. Being the astute person that he was, Minato concluded that a demonstration was necessary. Yugao appeared beside Minato and quickly gave her katana to her. Neko, would you mind handing me your katana for a moment? She asked. Kakashi then showed up holding a blank scroll and said, Kakashi-san, hand me a scroll if you would, please. After taking out a brush and ink, Minato started writing on the paper. He was using the generic sealing technique to create a storage seal. As those in the room who were starting to notice realized, Minato sealed the katana into the scroll after completing his task. Hiruzen-sama, would you be willing to volunteer yourself for a little demonstration? Hiruzen could see what was happening, but he felt that Minato needed to lighten the mood a bit anyhow. I would be honored, Hokage-sama. Minato proceeded to prod the professor with the scroll while Hiruzen stood beside him maintaining a phony look of annoyance. Minato continued to poke more forcefully and even gave the elderly Sarutobi a head bump for roughly 5 minutes. This rather humorous performance continued until some of the shinobi in attendance, including Fugaku Uchiha, grew agitated. Finally, Fugaku said, Is there a point to this obnoxious and childish display, Minato-sama? What exactly is this accomplishing, other than making you look like a fool? Minato grinned. Well, it just seemed odd that this scroll hasn't killed Hiruzen-sama yet. I mean, I sealed the blade into the scroll, but I don't see any cuts or punctures consistent with a blade. Those who had not yet deduced the significance of Minato's actions started to realize. The solution was right in front of them, but up until now, no one was prepared to accept it. Just as the scroll was a katana, Naruto was no more the Kyuubi no Yoko. The knowledge that Naruto was the son of their beloved leader further embarrassed those who believed that Naruto was just a front for the fox. At least now people were starting to consider Naruto as a person, even though there were still those who didn't care at all and those who now had a new reason to despise Naruto. Now that I seem to have cleared up some confusion surrounding my son, Minato began, I will need to make some things abundantly clear now. How we choose to raise Naruto will be Kushina's and my prerogative as parents. I will only train Naruto to be a ninja if that is what he wants. We will also not be accepting marriage offers right now, so don't bother. Naruto up until now has not had the ability to make his own decisions, and he has a lot to have fixed due to his life in the orphanage. The last thing I need for him right now is to arrange a political marriage with someone he doesn't even know simply because someone wants more power in the village by marrying my son. Finally, I would like to see each and every one of the clan heads tomorrow afternoon. I wish to speak with each and every one of you mostly. I want to catch up with my friends, but I also have some private business to discuss now. If there is nothing else, I have a family to attend to. Yane. And with that, Minato left in a yellow flash. Inoichi encapsulated the primary idea that was on everyone's mind. Well, that will make things fairly interesting around here now. Hiruzen looked amusedly at his contemporary as they went for a walk after the meeting was adjourned. I appreciate you taking out that pain in the ass, But was killing Danzo really necessary? I am sure that people would appreciate you coming back without having to put the fear of Kami into them. Perhaps, Hiruzen, but I wanted to make a point when I gave my life for this village 5 years ago. I wanted the people here to do one thing and one thing only. To respect my dying wish. They chose to ignore that. Therefore, if people are not going to respect my wishes as Hokage, then they will respect my wishes as the Yellow Flash if necessary. To visit his relatives, Minato went back to the tower. Prior to the meeting, Hiruzen proposed delaying the public announcement of Minato's identity as Hokage. Minato consented to this suggestion, provided that he also introduced Naruto as his son. It was an intriguing public revelation. The public's reaction was a mix of shame and indignation. Some groups were ashamed of their treatment of Naruto, while others were outraged that Naruto was Minato's child and that the truth had been kept a secret. After that, Minato had gone to get his family for their first meal together. Naruto clung to his parents like a magnet because he wasn't used to receiving so much attention. Although Kushina and Minato were aware that Naruto would find it challenging to adjust to the attention, they promised to support him throughout the process. A 43-year-old man lay beneath the shade of a tree. Wearing a red vest and a green suit, he was leaning on a giant scroll. He wore a headband with the kanji for oil on it to shield his eyes from his wild white hair, which fell down his back into a long ponytail. It turned out that this man was Jiraiya the Toad Sage. He wasn't returning in a hurry because he was taking his time on the way back to inform the Hokage about the latest information he had obtained from his spy network, which was basically squad because there was nothing to report. A puff of smoke broke the silence of his sleep. When the smoke cleared, a green toad with yellow eyes, a black robe, white hair with eyebrows and a goatee, and a cane were visible. He was instantly identified as one of Mount Myoboku, Fukasaku's 2 great toad sages. Jiraiya-chan, we have a problem. He opened one eye. Jiraiya. I'll say we have a problem. Fukasaku-sensei. You're interrupting my nap. Fukasaku struck Jiraiya over the head with his cane because he was annoyed that the toad sage was openly disregarding him. This is no laughing matter. Jiraiya. Something has happened with the summoning scroll. That made Jiraiya take notice. There was no easy way to manipulate the Toad summoning contract. The summoning contract was a document that only those who had already signed it could access, unlike other scrolls that could be changed or broken into. In order to evaluate the situation, Jiraiya unfolded the large scroll he was carrying. He turned back to Fukasaku, not seeing anything wrong at first. Sensei, if this is some kind of joke, look at the signatures, boy. Jiraiya glanced at the signatures again. The majority of the names on the scroll belonged to people who had previously had the ability to call forth toads. A living party to the contract was indicated by a red signature, while a deceased party was indicated by a black one. Jiraiya examined the contract more closely and discovered that one name was in red when it should have been in black. Namikaze Minato. Jiraiya was surprised. There's no way that could be right. Minato died 5 years ago. How could his name still be in red? Unless... Sensei, hadn't Minato's name been written in black? That's the problem. We found the name had changed to red rather suddenly. Jiraiya-chan. Someone has either tampered with the scroll, or someone has brought him back to life. Jiraiya felt enraged. He was aware that it was possible to bring the dead back to life, and that anyone who had used Minato to harm the village would be rudely awakened in order to exact revenge on anyone who dared to disparage his student's memory. Jiraiya thanked Fukasaku, called in Gamahiro, one of his many toad allies, and headed straight for Konoha.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.